Hello and welcome to our special edition of Politiki, brought to you by News 24. My name is Mahlatse Gallens. We're coming to you live from the ANC's 5th National Policy Conference at the Nasrec Expo Center south of Johannesburg. For the next 5 days until Wednesday, the 5th of July, we will be bringing you this special edition of Politiki to break down the policy discussions that are mostly happening behind closed doors. We will give you in-depth analysis and all of the breaking stories from our reporters on the ground. 2017 has been described as a defining year for the ANC. Some have said it's an adapt or die moment for the party. It is just coming from the 2016 local government elections, where its electoral support declined by 10%. And we also saw the party losing 3 of the major metros, Tshwane, Johannesburg, and Nelson Mandela Bay. It is also governing the worst economic crisis post-apartheid. We currently have the highest unemployment rates in 14 years. We have been downgraded to junk status. And one thought that we need to think about, we now have more people receiving social grants than those that are in formal employment. This is the backdrop of the ANC's policy discussions, and these are the solutions that they will be trying to find, or so we hope. But to get into this policy discussions, we've got our resident analyst who will be with us throughout the week, Ralph Mateja and Mpumelelo Mkabela, who write for us on www.news24.com every single week. Gentlemen, welcome to our special edition of Politiki.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start with you, Ralph. Is this an adapt or die policy conference for the ANC, obviously also looking forward to the December elective conference?
Well, I think that the problems that the ANC is experiencing, shown in poor performance in government the past 20 years, as you correctly stated, they cannot be resolved through maybe a single instance or a once-off solution, such as what will be decided here within the conference. They are quite complex. So I think that what we can get out of here maybe is the intention of the ANC to actually tread a new path. You need agreement when it comes to policy. There are other things, of course, that the party will have to deal with. They've got a reputational crisis, the whole thing of credibility as well. If you look within the public space, you're going to find out that the ANC maybe is one of the few parties in the world, actually, that has got over 60% or 60% of the vote, but it still doesn't have credibility to implement policy. Policies are being challenged in court, the mining charter, and so forth. So for me, this conference could actually assist them to tread a new path if they use it well. But I think the problems are so complex that I wouldn't reduce it to a single conference, that it could be the chief signifier or maybe decider as to what is going to happen within the party.
Obviously, Mpumelelo, given what we saw in the 2016 local government elections and the results that came out of the ANC has a crisis in terms of building confidence amongst the electorate. One of the things we did see is that those that are not happy with the ANC decided not to go out and actually vote, even though we saw the opposition gaining in some of those metros. Should this be the beginning of building that confidence amongst the electorate?
I would say, whether it's a do or die situation electorally, I would say it's a second step towards do or die. The last step being the third one, that's gonna come in December. Let me explain. Few of us often focus on the fact that the ANC has declined electorally for the last 4 elections. We often focus on the last one, and the last one this time being the last local government elections, which is August 2016. But the ANC declined of all the elections where Jacob Zuma was president since 2009. The ANC has been in decline. 2 national elections and 2 local government elections. So we have to put that into perspective. So coming to the current scenario that you are picking up from 2016. In 2016, after the ANC lost those metros they have just mentioned, the ANC decided that it was going to do introspection, right? And it mobilize members, branches, regions, all structures. Let's introspect, guys. What's wrong with us? Why did we lose so much? And the outcome was that, oh no, we take a collective responsibility.
Yeah.
But nobody said, out of that collective response, what is it that this collective did wrong? And how are they going to solve? They never came up with a solution. So that was the first step. They got that wrong. That was a death situation. They got that one wrong. We are now in the second one. This is another opportunity now to see if they can actually introspect for real before the final death or survival happens in December.
And I mean, if talking to that, is that parts of the ANC wanted to put the blame specifically on President Jacob Zuma, but we know from that NEC meeting they decided it is collective responsibility. But they did identify some of the problems, that they are becoming arrogant as a party, there's a growing distance between them and the electorate. They also admitted that the scandals, corruption perceived or real, has contributed to that defeat. But we haven't seen them do anything actively to correct that, or have we, Ralph?
You know, when it comes to the ANC looking into itself and writing documents that show that they acknowledge the problems that they have, they tend to do that work very well. But the problem is that they never really implement some of the commitments that they make themselves. I mean, the whole idea of organizational renewal is one issue that has been popping up far back from the 2012 policy conference. There has always been this thing around organizational renewal. But when you are looking at the organization, and as Mpumelo is noting as well, you see under President Jacob Zuma, you have this decline when it comes to the credibility of the structures of the ANC itself. And you have actually, under President Jacob Zuma, you have seen the branches of this ANC no longer serving as that connecting point between the party and the people. So I don't think that there is willingness or maybe determination to actually do something about it. Diagnoses are there as to what is the problems within the ANC, renewal of the branches, all the documents. I mean, even the 2016 local government election last year, there was a document that was in circulation within the ANC that actually predicted that they might suffer. And they take the document, but the problem is that there is no sense of collective responsibility. There is a lot of blame game, and that is what I think makes it difficult for them to commit to actually do this organizational renewal. I mean, no one actually has taken responsibility for those elections, for poor performance. And we know that this is happening under President Jacob Zuma, no doubt. But you can't also attribute everything else to him because he operates within the organization. They are enablers within the organization, but no one is willing to say, we got wrong there, this is our collective responsibility, we think we want to turn the corner by doing this and that. That is where the problem is. The party, they have a ton of documents on what
they can diagnose.
Exactly.
But they can't cure themselves.
And the sad part is that it is becoming the problem in government as well. We diagnose.
But you see, that's the issue, Mahlatsi, that you see, if you acknowledge a problem, but you don't act on it, you sound like you're being dishonest. You just want to acknowledge it for the sake of people knowing that you know the problem. But if you're not doing anything about it, you are as good as not having acknowledged it. So what's the point?
So they've dedicated these 2 days to renewal, to look at the state of the organization. What would you say, Mpumi, is the first thing that they would need to do after they've diagnosed the problem? What is the first thing that they would need to do so that we get a sense that they've acknowledged the problem and now they're starting the process of administering the medicine?
Well, some of them have to acknowledge that they themselves are the problem. Because if you talk about corruption that has eroded public trust in the ANC, the question is, who's corrupt in the ANC? Now, those people must step aside. Or those who are honest enough to confront the dishonest ones must tell them that step aside, because if you talk about corruption, we're actually talking about you. Every corrupt act has a face. Every corrupt act is committed by somebody. Every dishonest decision making or decision taken, there's a person behind it. So you can't simply say we acknowledge our wrongs but then do nothing. That would be the first step. Because if you can check, even on corruption, I mean, the ANC has lost even confidence among its own people. Why, for example, when ministers are reshuffled, and they're supposed to, those who are demoted from cabinet, they're supposed to go back to parliament as backbenchers. They resign. Is that not a deployment of the ANC to go back to parliament? Why is it not an honor to serve as a public representative in parliament? for me, it's an indication that I've lost confidence in this party that has deployed me. I can't serve its interest in parliament. The second example is when there was the ANC launched the state capture investigation. What happened? The investigation collapsed because nobody came to the ANC to offer information. Why? People did not trust the ANC.
Yeah. Since
that ANC investigation failed, how many reports have we got now of state capture? We've got about 4. One public protector, one from the academics, one from the South African Council of Churches. The last one was released yesterday by Tokyo, the Trillion document.
And we've got the outer one.
We've got the fifth one, the outer one.
Yeah.
So none of these people with all these documents and all this information, and we now know from the Gupta emails that actually there were more people who knew about what was happening, but none of them went to the ANC. Again, it's a question of the ANC has lost trust. People can't go to the ANC and confide because the ANC itself is a problem. The leaders that people are supposed to go to are themselves a problem. So the first step is we are a problem. So how do we solve ourselves?
Yeah. Okay, we'll continue with that topic. Obviously, the face of that crisis in the past, since 2007, I would say, has been President Jacob Zuma. And yesterday, he kicked off the policy conference with the gala dinner where he was talking, basically suggesting that the crisis the party is facing is not insurmountable. It is mainly disagreements. Let's take a listen. Okay, it seems like we're having some technical issues. We will come to that. But can this 2 days go without discussing President Jacob Zuma's role in the crisis the ANC is facing, Ralph?
I mean, already these 2 days, it's been contentious as to what would it be used for. The stalwarts, those who call themselves proper stalwarts, because you do have different versions within the ANC, they have boycotted this. They said that it will not provide a better platform for them to actually engage with the ANC leadership. And that just shows the tensions within the party and that there is no willingness to even engage. So can these 2 days really be used properly to deal with organizational renewal? Already you have cracks. For me, it will be, what is it that you can salvage from this last, these 2 days that they have set aside to deal with organizational issues? What is it that can actually come out? And you can't avoid the question of President Jacob Zuma, because one of the reasons I think why there is no willingness to actually set aside this day, or maybe to have a separate conference to deal with organizational matter and engage with those stalwarts, is because of the posture that the stalwarts understood to have taken with regard to President Jacob Zuma's leadership. They have asked him to go, and the president's backers, actually supporters within the party, are not willing to engage. There is no willingness to even acknowledge the integrity of those stalwarts. The things that you hear being said about those stalwarts on radio, various media platforms, you ask yourself, are they talking about the same people who actually, dedicated their lives to this? It's ANC members cannibalizing each other, and it's just a question of, are they going to continue doing that in the next 2 days? My sense is that listening to Gweta Mandashe, you can see fear. People should not sing this, people should not. I mean, this is supposed to be about policy and organizational renewal, and you are dealing with basic things about just getting people to listen.
Yes, don't sing songs that hurt.
Exactly.
You must sing songs that actually praise leaders. Mpumi, I mean, can they actually get away from not discussing President Jacob Zuma?
It's impossible not to discuss Zuma. The question is whether people will be allowed to discuss him honestly and in detail, or whether during that process they will be stopped to say, no, you can't discuss it. But there will be an attempt to discuss him. But if they don't discuss him in detail and they don't analyze the impact that has had on the party, both in the party itself and while in government, I don't think there's any hope for this conference.
Okay, we're now ready to hear from President Jacob Zuma, who was addressing the Progressive Business Forum gala dinner last night, talking to the fact that the challenges that the party is facing are not necessarily insurmountable. Let's take a listen.
While the ANC has sound policies, we must use the policy conference to find mechanisms to accelerate their effective implementation. That will be our main focus, to say how do we effectively implement our good policies. We are all also aware of the internal organizational challenges facing our movement. We are determined to attend to these, as we have always done so in the history of the ANC. We have set aside 2 days to focus on organizational renewal. South Africa needs a strong, united, and focused ANC. And we have a duty to ensure that we resolve all challenges that hinder the ANC from fully fulfilling its role as the leader of the society. Any differences that we may have must not impact on the need to put our country and its people first. In the world, people at times disagree. There is nothing strange when people disagree. As long as you have more than one person, the possibility of disagreeing is always there, even in the family. You can't say this family is now a lost cause because they argue. At times, argument helps to clarify the issues. And it is in the culture of the ANC to debate matters. Others will tell you that contradictions are important. Without a contradiction, it means there will be no.
Zuma yesterday at the gala dinner at the Progressive Business Forum. Mpumi, we're also getting a sense, we spoke to a number of people within the party, especially branch leaders, who were saying that, you know, the last gathering of the ANC was the NGC, the National General Council. And by then, you know, some of these issues were still, you know, issues in the media with no concrete evidence. For example, we hadn't had the Constitutional Court finding that President Jacob Zuma had failed to uphold the Constitution in terms of the Nkandla matter. The state capture report had not been released. Obviously, this policy conference has no constitutional rights in terms of taking any major decisions, or they can only be ratified at the December elective conference. But if those voices come through, how will they influence going forward, especially looking at the fact that we have a motion of no confidence in the president coming up?
The biggest problem here, I think, including with what the president is saying, is a credibility issue. You see, he's talking about this is an important policy forum for the ANC, setting aside 2 days to discuss organizational matters, and everything that hinders the ANC in its objectives should be discussed. But this is being said by somebody who has violated the Constitution, and the Constitution is the highest policy stroke legal document that you have, which the ANC subscribes to, which the government that he leads subscribes to. So once you are seen to be the kind of person who advocates what he's advocating, while on the other hand, you are seen to be breaking that highest policy instrument that this country has, which is in the form of a legal document, the Constitution. It already brings you in a situation where you are not effectively able to lead. Being effective leader means people follow you, people support you. I'm not talking about supporting you as they show, you know, in physical appearance, but even deep down, when they look at you, they actually agree and support you fully. So the fact that you have all of these divisions, people singing different tunes and all of that, shows that the president is not able to effectively lead the party, is not able to unite the party, precisely because he himself has broken certain policy prescripts of the party and the country. So if you have to address that, you must first deal with that before you move to the next level as to what more policies do we need to improve the lives of people. First deal with the credibility issue and put it aside and move to the next step.
We hope that that is going to be happening. Obviously, it's going to be, a lot of it is going to be behind closed doors. But let's talk about the ANC in its life. From 2007, that elective conference, that's where we started seeing these deepening divisions. And, you know, we saw that again in 2012, and now we're in 2017, and there's this presidential race that is currently underway. One of the things that they've proposed in that discussion document is an electoral commission, you know, to be created within the party. But I'm wondering, how would that help in terms of managing this highly contested period for the party?
You know, there are certain contestations within the party and within the country that you can no longer reverse. And most of the times when you listen to ANC members, they always reflect on the discipline of the party from the past, drawn from leaders such as Ogar Tambo and so forth. But you do have the reality of a party that is now governing in an area, an environment that has got a lot of resources. People get tempted. And I think that being in power, you actually get tempted, lobbied and so forth. So my sense is that you need to actually reformulate the internal structures of the organization, including the electoral system. You can no longer, I think it is unfair to say to ANC members, do not openly contest for positions. Let them contest, but restructure the internal processes of the party to allow them. I find it extremely unfair to say that if you govern in a competitive society where people do have those individual ambitions, then you expect members of the party, within the party, to live in their own world, not to be guided by those individual ambitions. Whereas you see some of their conduct in government when it comes to resources is actually driven by those individual ambitions. You need to actually adjust the internal processes. I don't think there has been a full reflection on how do you adjust internal processes of the party to fit the party that is in a democracy, in an open society, actually in a market society.
I mean, is that why the elective or the succession debate is so divisive? Is it because it's still cloaked in, you know, decisions made behind closed doors, people are not openly contesting, or is it just democracy as it plays out? People will support one leader or another. Why is it such a serious issue when it comes to the ANC?
That's a problem. The ANC has failed to evolve its policies that take into account the evolving nature of the dynamic of a market economy. We live in a capitalist society. People want material things. And so and also the fact that the ANC is now in government. It's got access to resources. Its own cadres are deployed in all state institutions. And as Ralph says, people are tempted to break the rule to get a quick buck there and there. So the ANC policies of leadership contestations are still based on pre-94 a scenario where to get to be in the ANC was a matter of death. You had to sacrifice your life. You had to sacrifice everything. You didn't expect to gain anything. Right now, you can join the ANC with the expectation that you'll be elected a branch chairman, and from branch chairman you'll be elected councillor. If you are lucky enough, you could actually be deployed in any of the state entities, be a board somewhere, and influence procurement processes. So the ANC has not adapted its elective mechanisms to take into account these new material positions that it finds itself in the state. So its policies have literally decayed. They haven't evolved.
They haven't considered. They're not in this century, I guess.
Yes, but we must also appreciate the fact that some members of the ANC are beginning to try to say, let's move with the times. I mean, the Eastern Cape has resolved that that all members of the ANC, all million members, or just close to a million members,
like an American system,
must all vote. And they're trying to do that to avoid a situation where they elect a branch delegate to come to the elective conference in December with an instruction that you're going to vote for this candidate,
and
only to change.
Take a picture and show that you voted for
only to change in the middle, because we have once people know that you are the delegate, people bribe you on your way to the conference. So they are saying all members must vote, and that's to avoid, you can't bribe, well, possibly you can't bribe 1 million people.
It will be quite a difficult one. Let's take a break there with our resident analyst. That was Mpumelelo Mkabela and also Ralph Mateja. They will continue to be with us throughout the week as we break down the policy discussions that we're expecting here at the Nasrec Expo Center. It is the ANC's 5th National Policy Conference. These first 2 days have been dedicated to looking at the state of the ANC. Some have said it is an ailing state, it is an ICU, and it needs to be resuscitated. Remember, we love hearing from you, so please get in touch with us on our Twitter handle at News24 or also on Facebook. This is a special production or a special edition of Politiki. In a short while, we're going to be joined by the ANC Women's League President, Ms. Bathabile Dlamini, and we'll get a chance to speak to her about her impressions going into this policy conference. What are the priorities for the Women's League? What are their ideas of resuscitating the ANC, and going forward, what they think will help towards as we go to the elective conference in December. As we said, we love hearing from you, so do get in touch with us at News24 on Facebook and also on Twitter. My name is Mahlatse Gallens. Ralph, as we wait for the ANC Women's League president to come through, we've seen the Women's League play quite an influential role within the ANC. We know that women in the ANC are the majority. In terms of their strength and influence within the party, how do you characterize it?
You know, you have to look at it, I think, bottom up. I mean, you are right, an observation that women are majority within the ANC. But shouldn't it be worrying people that out of 9 provinces, how many chairpersons, provincial chairpersons of ANC are women?
We don't have.
We don't have. And for me, influence should come from within. It's not just about having women at the top position, but it's about having women to actually influence the structures of the ANC. I'm yet to see that provincial chairperson being a woman within the ANC. You need that. You actually need branch leaders as well, being women within the ANC. Because one of the failure of affirmative action, it is try to plug people up at the top without necessarily allowing them to influence organizations throughout, within the depth and the breadth of the organization. That is what I think the party need to be able to think about. And I think that women within the ANC need to bargain hard for their gender ticket. They need to define that gender ticket. It cannot be that the gender ticket of women within the ANC is largely influenced by men's factional interests. That should not be the case, because it undermines the credibility of the gender position within the party.
Thank you. We are now going to be joined in studio by the ANC Women's League President, Ms. Bathabile Dlamini. Obviously, as Ralph was mentioning there, the women in the ANC are the majority. Ms. Dlamini, thank you very much for joining us for a special edition of Politiki, brought to you by News24. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start off. We are asking this question. Some have said this policy conference has to be one of the critical steps in terms of defining the ANC, and in fact it could be an adapt or die moment, given that there is the threat of the party losing power in the 2019 elections. Do you agree?
All policy conferences of the ANC have been very critical, because they look at the ANC and how it can advance its program of action to liberate the people of the country. But also,
you know what, it's going to be difficult. I want to try, but I have a 12 or
20
talk
years
with
all most of the liberation movements lose the elections. We never lost the elections. And the narrative that is followed and pushed now is of an ANC that is breaking, that has divisions, and some, to their advantage, have changed the battle of ideas to be divisions. There's always been a battle of ideas in the ANC.
So you're saying this is part of a democratic process that happens within the ANC. Are you not admitting that we have seen these divisions play out, especially when there's a succession battle looming in December?
Look, at all given times in the ANC, when you prepare for the conference, there are divisions. Immediately after the unbanning of the political organizations, there were those that were called hawks and others were called doves in the ANC. And why? Because there are external forces in the, who use the ANC to get what they want. We don't exist in isolation, but what is important is that in the past 104 years, the ANC has depended on its values. And what is good about the ANC is that it reviews its policies. And this is the time to review policies, but also this is the time, as the Women's League have said, we are unhappy about how the leadership has been driving the debates.
What do you mean by that?
Issues of radical economic transformation. It's changed to something else that is not there. Just because people are looking at themselves as individuals, and they must not rush because the time for campaigning is coming. And instead of driving a narrative that is not the ANC narrative, they must be thinking of how they are going to convince us to elect them.
Are you referring to what we heard, for example, from Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa saying that, you know, this whole talk around radical economic transformation is merely a ruse to actually build up to that succession debate? Is that what you're referring to?
One, people saying that there is no white monopoly capital. You go to the strategy and tactics of the ANC, but also go to the speeches of what the very same people that are saying there is no white capital monopoly. Go to their speeches and see what they've been saying about a white monopoly capital all these years, and which says we are at a very dangerous stage where our leaders prefer to be on the side of our former oppressors just because they have their issues that can be solved differently.
So are you also agreeing with those that say we shouldn't racially define the dominance of who is actually owning the means of production as defending white people?
I don't think that we have to defend what the ANC does not stand for.
Why is it important to racially define that? Why should we call it white monopoly?
Because of where we come from. We all understand that in our country, we were ruled by the people or oppressed by the people that stayed with us. And that is why we said our colonialism was colonialism of a special type. And they enriched themselves. They took the land and they had special programs for the poor. And then there is no way you cannot discuss those issues. Well, not in a negative way, but in the way that is going to change our country. We have a responsibility of transforming the institutions and structures that are very key in this country because they are diluted the judiciary, the executive, and the legislature, and even government departments. We have to change them. It's going to be a painful process.
What do you mean
they
change
must
them?
be changed,
Especially the judiciary. What do you mean change them?
benefit our cause. Judiciary. Just small issues. The cases always favor the rich, those that have money. All right, a serious one now. Issues of violence against women and children. At all times, the woman who is violated has to explain herself. The perpetrator does not have that responsibility. Secondly, we lose the cases. Why? Because of the way our systems are.
But what changes are you then suggesting to the judiciary? I'm trying to understand
That,
what are the changes.
The judiciary must transform. It must be able to defend farm workers. It must be able to defend the poor. It must be able to defend the vulnerable. For instance, women, the issue at hand, and what we've been seeing escalating in the country.
Last week, we spoke to the Secretary General of the Women's League, Meokgo Matiba, who was suggesting that the constitutional democracy as we have it currently is not working, and perhaps we should move to a parliamentary system. Is that a view that you share?
It's the discussion. There are many issues we are discussing right now in the ANC Women's League that are very critical. It's that issue. Secondly, others have a feeling that death sentence must come back because of violence and how people get away with murder, and that we must find a recourse, for instance, for those that are supposed to prepare a case for a vulnerable person who lose important information. For now, there is no recourse. Also, the issues of safety where we stay and not sharing our lives with criminals.
You know, the issue of the death penalty has been, seen as kind of very sacrosanct to the ANC when it decided to remove it from the statutes. I'm surprised that you are now returning this conversation.
What I've noticed is that women are feeling aggrieved a lot. And it's actually young women that have been calling on the death sentence. And our view, because of our experience, is that you can't allow the state to kill, because you will start with rapists and those that kill, but as time goes on, there would be recklessness. And therefore,
especially because of our past experiences.
Of our past experiences, but also because of what happens in other countries. And therefore, we are saying we have to strengthen our legislation and make it work, but also mobilize women, young women, and empower them to deal with the challenges they are facing presently.
Just as a last question on this part, what is your personal view on returning the death penalty?
My personal view is that the state cannot be given license to kill. And that does not mean that I don't feel for our young women that have been killed. And that does not mean that we don't understand the issues of crime. But what we are saying is that we need to come up with strategies that are going to change totally, and strategies that are going to take into consideration that we are now a bigger country, bigger population, and a government should organize itself in that way. Because when we came into government, there were a few people focusing on a few people, but now it is focusing on a larger population.
If you could just respond to this criticism. Some are saying that you're now focusing on transforming the judiciary because of the many cases that the ANC has lost in government. Is that the reason why you're calling for the restructuring of the judiciary?
For me, that's not important. What is important is the lives of our ordinary people. The ANC can look for another good lawyer or a good advocate, but Mam Kize, who is sitting at home, cannot find that facility.
As we end off this conversation, you've talked about the fact that you will be pushing for those who control the economy to be described as white monopoly capital. What are the other issues that the Women's League will be pushing for at this policy conference?
Can I raise the issue of racialism? Racialism or racism is institutionalized in South Africa. And therefore, we are not going to focus on one white there, one white there. We are, for instance, mines. Who occupies the mines? The retailers, the manufacturers, everything is controlled by a few, and who have strategically placed themselves to influence our decisions because they think they are important. There is no remorse, there is no commitment to working together with the government and the people of South Africa to change their lives. So when you talk about racializing the monopoly capital, we need to be very careful because we are talking about structures and institutions.
But isn't it the crisis is that the ANC has failed to implement its own policies? And, you know, actually there are those, even within the ANC, that this policy conference really, we're not expecting any new ideas. The crisis is that the ANC as a government has failed to implement its own very great policies that could actually take South Africans out of poverty and decrease the unemployment rates.
Okay. We've always said as the ANC, a lot has been done, but still a lot needs to be done. But also, we are a young democracy. On a 5-yearly basis, we come together and look into how we can change our policies and make them work. For instance, as women, we advocated for the women's ministry. And now we do have the women's ministry. But it does not have more teeth. We want it to have more teeth. We want it to have more budget. We want it to have powers to empower and focus on the development of women, because there isn't anyone who is focusing squarely on that. CGE, we are saying the CGE is doing a lot, yes, doing a lot of work. But it's not funded like other Chapter 9 institutions. And we are saying, what is the difference? So we know what we want. And we know how we are going to get what we want.
Thank you very, very much. We could go on and on. We always love hearing from you. That was the president of the ANC Women's League. Thank you very much, Ms. Batamile Dlamini, for joining us here on our special edition of Politiki, brought to you by News 24. Remember, we love hearing from you, so please do get in touch with us at News 24 on Facebook and also on Twitter. We will be coming to you live every single day throughout the ANC's policy conference here at the Nasrec Expo Center. breaking down the political discussions and also getting in-depth analysis, speaking to our reporters who are covering, who are trying to get inside those commissions as they are going to be happening behind closed doors. Right now, we're going to be joined by our political journalist, CD Madia, who has been, very much busy with, this policy conference. CD is our political reporter. Yesterday, she was at President Jacob Zuma's addressing the Progressive Business Forum's gala dinner. CD, what did you make of President Jacob Zuma's speech yesterday?
Good morning, Matlati. It was a short and, it was a very short and sweet delivery. Heard a few senior journalists around me saying, oh, it's much ado about nothing. He hasn't told us much. But the president did speak about what's important. He placed the country first yesterday. He said, we all need to work together. And he also acknowledged that South Africa is going through a difficult time, saying that, some people may be concerned and they're right to do so. But he also then obviously spoke about the state of the party, speaking about what is happening with the ANC, the challenges facing the party. So he came out openly, very frank to the business community at large, sitting in the room with him saying, there are problems, and these are the problems, but saying that the problems aren't bad. Spoke about contradictions and used feet as an analogy, funny enough, saying, as you move, feet contradict each other, and as they do so, you move forward. Saying that if they don't do that, if there's no debate, if there's constant agreement, then the ANC is not moving and the country is not moving.
But obviously, today he'll be addressing a very different audience. These are the branch delegates of the ANC. He's meeting them again since the NGC in 2015, and a lot has happened since then. I mean, can we expect President Jacob Zuma to talk about the real examples of the challenges facing the ANC, from the scandals that they have been involved in, and many of them implicating him?
I don't think a lot of those will come out with us in the room, as we understand that we'll be kept out of certain discussions or reports. I don't know if he'll be as frank as he needs to be with the branch members, with the delegates, with the media in the room. I do think, though, that if the ANC is not frank with itself, then it really is a do-or-die moment. A lot of people, even within the movement, have been predicting the ANC's death. People writing its obituary, even some who want to run as president, who are presidential candidates, are still saying, oh, this thing is dying, but we'll bury it. I still want to be its president, but it's dying.
Yeah, that was Matthew Posa last week, quite contradictory if you think about it. But CD, speaking to the delegates that are coming here, what have they prioritized? What are especially for these 2 days, before we even get to policy issues about the state of the ANC, what are they prioritizing? What are the issues that we will expect that they will be bringing forward if they are not silenced behind those closed discussions?
I liken them to a hungry lion that's been without food for many, many, many days. They've been waiting to see the president. They've been waiting to be in a room with President Jacob Zuma to tell him how they feel. A lot of branch leaders, chairpersons, secretaries saying to me throughout the week, we haven't had a chance. We knew that there was assumptions of certain things when we held our National General Council. I think it was in 2015. We knew there were issues, but we didn't know what the issues were. We didn't know the extent, really, of the rot. We knew that there were assumptions of rot. If you recall, the language at the time was, there's assumptions, perceptions of corruption. They've gone past perceptions. They're now facing it. Every day you've got the Gupta emails. Every day the president is found wanting in some way or another. So a lot of the branches are scared of the impact of their leaders on the party. A lot of the people at the lower ends of the ANC want to see the movement thrive.
So do you think they will actually confront the leadership, whether it's President Jacob Zuma or the NEC? Do you think that they are prepared to actually say to them, the problems that we have are you?
Absolutely. I think there's a disagreement almost, though, in who to blame per se. Some saying blame the entire NEC. They enabled President Jacob Zuma to behave the way that he has, to implicate and to tarnish the name of the ANC. So they're saying the collective, they want to take collective responsibility for the poor performance of the ANC. Let them collectively go. Some want to do that. Others want to direct it at the head of the movement, saying you are the face of the movement and we don't want to choose you anymore. We want to choose the ANC over you. They want to put him in a position where he sees it fit to go. I mean, this is something that even the SG of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe, said last week at the ANC Gauteng's policy conference, saying there might be no need to push for him to go. There might be no need to recall him. He might see it for himself that it's time to go. And I think that's what the branches want to do with this opportunity, especially over these 2 days, to make it clear to President Jacob Zuma that actually, sir, go, and leave it to him to make that decision.
Before I let you go, Tidi, we have to also just go back to last night. I mean, the tripartite alliance is very much part of defining the crisis that is within the ANC. And surprise, surprise, as Duma Dlamini was sitting at the big table with President Jacob Zuma. This is the man who apologized just a few weeks ago for attending President Jacob Zuma's birthday party while his federation has called for him to step down and has banned him from its activities.
That's why I'm laughing even before you get to the point, because it was the one awkward thing. He was wearing a star white suit, so he stood out. He couldn't miss him right next to the president. And yeah, he apologized unreservedly a few weeks ago and said he'd lead the charge to make sure that this man goes, because he has not honored his role as president. He has left the movement in disrepute. But there he is right next to him. But it's the same person who, as you said, at President Jacob Zuma's birthday said, be strong, you're going through challenging times, you will succeed. So one questions whether or not he was sincere when he told workers that he's unreservedly apologizing for being seen at the president's side and saying that their relationship is purely organizational. They've got no personal relationship. So you question that. You look at Zuma and you say, but Zuma Dlamini, you're clearly lying to the workers. But I must also quickly point out that the workers didn't believe him. It felt disingenuous to them, and they said it. They said Zuma's a joke.
I mean, I got a chance to speak to him just before we came onto this broadcast, and he refused to comment on that issue. And you know, I tried to push him about, but obviously, given what had happened, that there was unhappiness within the federation, and that led you to apologizing. Obviously, this is not going to go down well with the members, and he refused to comment on it. But do you think that we can see the knives back at him?
You know, I was told that they needed to wait, that they cannot afford to deal with Zuma at the moment because they have bigger issues as a federation to deal with. They were saying that we'll drag him. You know, the phrase I was given was, you know, you'll pull some people on the leash towards the ANC's elective conference in December. Whether they like it or not, we will pull them. The time is not right to deal with Zuma Dlamini. However, he continues in this vein. I feel like workers are going to say, no, actually don't. I remember one union leader saying to him, if you don't feel fit, if you're not up to the task of being a leader of the federation, say it, will let you go. Say it will let you go so we can continue with people who are willing to do what workers need to do. So I see this causing a big issue within COSATU, definitely.
Within the tripartite alliance, obviously we're expecting about 30 delegates each from COSATU, SANCO, and also the SACP. Do you think that they're largely to be the ones that push the leadership accountability when they discuss this 2 days of the state of the ANC?
I don't think it will just be up to the alliance. We know that the alliance will push for accountability. We know that the alliance will be in a room with ANC members explaining their positions. I mean, they've been very vocal over the past few months about why it is they don't want President Jacob Zuma. I think in an intimate environment, they will pretty much continue in the same vein. But I think what will be interesting is that the same issue of accountability will come from the ANC's, not only delegates, but also senior leaders. We spoke to a provincial leader who said, we need accountability. We need, as leaders, to account to our people within the movement to explain what it is that we've done right or wrong. If we're to be frank and to save the ANC, those kind of conversations need to take place. They cannot afford to have surface level conversations. They cannot afford to have a full conference, if you may. They need to actually get down to the hard business and find out what it is they've done wrong and ways towards rectifying. But also the president needs to admit to his own wrongdoings to his members.
And then as a last question, obviously we're expecting this heated battle around whether the enemy is white monopoly capital or just monopoly capital. Are you hearing from the delegates if that's an issue that they're also obsessed about?
Oh, of course, because that issue is actually split along factional battles towards the ANC's National Elective Conference in December. But one delegate, and I paused for a while because I think he maybe had a valid point. He said to me, Tidi, it's neither here nor there. When they say white monopoly capital on the one side, when they say monopoly capital, they're racializing it. It's silly. At the end of the day, we want one thing. We want radical economic transformation. And that's what you've been hearing. I've been attending business, I just came from the business breakfast. I've been listening to President Jacob Zuma last night. At the end of the day, they're calling for radical economic transformation. This morning with Minister Melisu Kikaba saying transformation is good for everybody. It's not just good for the majority. It will also serve the minority. It's in their interest to push this program of transformation.
That was our politics journalist, Tidi, my dear. Thank you very much for joining us. We will continue to hear from her throughout the week. As we said, we will be coming to you live every morning at 9 o'clock until the 5th of July when the ANC ends its policy conference. We'll continue to give you the breaking news. We will continue to give you in-depth analysis, and we will speak to the power brokers within the ANC. We love to hear from you, so please do contact us on social media using Facebook or Twitter at News24. This has been a special edition of Politiki. We will be back tomorrow. My name is Mahlatse Gallens.